Crixtal adjusted his observation equipment for the third time in an hour. The veteran Vorthak military observer had seen enough battles to know when nervousness was affecting his work. But this was different. For 237 years, he had watched species rise and fall across the galaxy. He had documented the last stand of the Trilaxian Empire, observed the surrender of the Nexus Coalition, and recorded the peaceful integration of 43 different worlds into the galactic hegemony. None of those experiences prepared him for what he was about to witness. The observation, ship silent witness, hung in space like a metal insect. Its sensors pointed toward the small blue-green planet below. Earth, the humans called it. Such a simple name for what the Galactic Council considered a minor problem that needed solving. Crixtal's tentacles moved across his recording device as he reviewed the mission briefing one more time. The humans had achieved faster-than-light communication 6 months ago. Their radio signals had been detected by hegemony listening posts, and their crude attempts at space travel had been observed by scout ships. According to the official report, they posed a potential threat to established trade routes and needed to be brought under hegemony control. The process was always the same. 3 battle cruisers would arrive in the system. The local species would be given a chance to surrender. If they refused, they would be shown the overwhelming power of hegemony technology. Most species chose surrender after seeing what they faced. The few that fought were quickly defeated and then integrated into the hegemony as member worlds. It was clean, efficient, and had worked for over 1,000 years. Crixtal looked at the tactical display showing the human defense fleet. 23 ships hung in space between the hegemony forces and their home planet. The largest vessel was barely half the size of a hegemony cruiser. Most looked like converted civilian ships with weapons bolted onto their hulls. The humans had managed to assemble this fleet in just 6 months after detecting the hegemony's approach. The military analysis was clear. The humans had inferior technology, smaller ships, and no experience in space warfare. Their defeat was certain. Crixtal was here to document how quickly they would surrender and what terms they would accept. His communication device buzzed with an incoming message from Admiral Vextar, aboard the hegemony flagship Domination. Observer Crixtal, we are beginning standard first contact protocols. Please record all human responses for council review. Understood, Admiral, Crixtal replied. He activated his recording systems and focused his sensors on the human fleet. The hegemony ships moved into formation. 3 massive battle cruisers, each one capable of destroying a moon, positioned themselves in a triangle around the human fleet. Their weapons remained powered down, but their shield generators hummed with energy. The message was clear: surrender or be destroyed. Admiral Vextar opened communications on all frequencies. His voice, translated into the primitive human language called English, echoed across space. Attention, human vessels. This is Admiral Vextar of the Galactic Hegemony Fleet. Your species has been selected for integration into our civilization. Power down your weapons and prepare to receive boarding parties. Compliance will ensure the safety of your population. Crixtal watched the human ships carefully. This was usually when species began powering down their weapons and requesting terms. Some tried to negotiate. A few asked for time to contact their governments. None had ever done what the humans did next. The human fleet began moving into attack formation. Crixtal checked his sensors twice to make sure he was reading the display correctly. The humans were not retreating. They were not requesting terms. They were preparing to fight 3 ships that outgunned them by a factor of 10. Admiral, came a voice from the largest human ship. The translation systems identified the speaker as Commander Deho, the human fleet leader. This is Commander Deho of the Earth Defense Fleet. Your offer of integration is declined. Admiral Vextar's response carried a note of confusion. Commander Deho, perhaps your translation systems are malfunctioning. You appear to be refusing a generous offer of membership in the most advanced civilization in the galaxy. Please reconsider. No malfunction, Admiral, Deho replied. His voice was calm, steady. We understand your offer perfectly. Our answer is no. Crixtal found himself leaning forward in his observation chair. In 2 centuries of recording these encounters, he had never heard such a response. The human commander sounded completely unafraid. Commander, Admiral Vextar continued, you cannot possibly believe your small fleet can stand against hegemony battle cruisers. Your technology is primitive. Your ships are outnumbered 3 to 1. This is not bravery. This is suicide. There was a long pause. When Commander Deho spoke again, his voice carried something Krixtal had trouble identifying. It took him several moments to realize what it was. Determination mixed with something that might have been amusement. Admiral, you're correct about our technology. You're right about our numbers. But you're wrong about one thing. This isn't suicide. This is Tuesday. Krixtal's recording equipment captured the moment when the human fleet completed its formation change. Instead of the typical battle line most species used, the humans had arranged their ships in a complex pattern that seemed to have no tactical purpose. Small fighters wove between larger vessels, while support ships positioned themselves in what appeared to be random locations. Final warning, Commander Deho. Admiral Vextar transmitted. Surrender now or face the consequences. The human commander's response came immediately. Come and take it. Krixtal felt his breathing apparatus flutter with surprise. The phrase was simple, direct, and completely insane. The humans were not just refusing to surrender. They were challenging the hegemony to try to make them. Admiral Vextar's next transmission went to his own fleet. All ships, power weapon systems. Target human vessels for disabling shots. Try to minimize casualties. The hegemony battlecruisers began their attack sequence. Massive energy cannons rotated toward the human fleet. Shield generators hummed louder as the ships prepared for combat. In less than a minute, the most powerful weapons in known space would fire on the small human fleet. Krixtal watched the human ships during these final moments before combat. He expected to see panic, confusion, or last-minute attempts to surrender. Instead, he observed something that defied all his experience with pre-combat behavior. The human ships began transmitting to each other on open channels. Not tactical data or battle plans, but personal messages. Krixtal's translation systems picked up fragments. Tell my wife I love her. Remember to feed my cat. See you on the other side. It's been an honor serving with you all. On the bridge of the human flagship Indomitable, Commander Deho was speaking to his crew. Krixtal's sensors could detect the conversation through the ship's communication systems. Everyone knows what we're facing, Deho said. Everyone knows the odds. Any crew member who wants to evacuate to the escape pods has 60 seconds to do so. No shame in choosing to live. Krixtal counted the seconds. When the minute passed, not a single human had left their post. The human tactical officer, identified as Commander Hana, spoke next. All ships report ready for combat, sir. Fighter squadrons are standing by under Squadron Leader Wu Jin's command. Very well, Deho replied. Signal the fleet. Message reads, for Earth, for each other, and for those who will come after us. The response from the human fleet was immediate and unified. Understood and acknowledged. Krixtal realized he was witnessing something unprecedented. The humans weren't just preparing to fight against impossible odds. They were doing it with complete unity and acceptance of the probable outcome. More disturbing, they seemed to be doing it for reasons that had nothing to do with military logic. The hegemony weapons reached full charge. Admiral Vextar gave the firing command. The first energy blast lit up space between the fleets. Brilliant beams of destruction reached out from the hegemony ships toward the human vessels. Krixtal expected to see the human ships attempt to flee, or at least scatter to minimize damage. Instead, the human fleet did something that made Krixtal question his own sensors. They attacked. 23 human ships, facing 3 vessels each 10 times their size, launched themselves forward in a coordinated assault. Small fighter craft led the charge, followed by converted civilian vessels armed with weapons that should have been completely ineffective against hegemony shields. The first human ship to die was a small patrol craft called Courage. It took a direct hit from a hegemony energy cannon and exploded in a ball of superheated gas. Krixtal expected this first casualty to break human morale and lead to surrender requests. Instead, the human fleet's attack became more intense. Fighter Squadron Leader Wu Jin's voice came across the communication channels. Courage is down. All fighters increase attack speed. Make them pay for every ship they take. The human fighters began moving in patterns Krixtal had never seen before. Instead of maintaining safe distances and firing from long range, they flew directly into the teeth of hegemony defensive fire. Several fighters were destroyed in seconds, but their sacrifice allowed other ships to close distance and target vulnerable spots on the hegemony cruisers. Admiral, came a report from one of the hegemony SR. Crixtal's observation equipment registered the destruction of the human ship Perseverance at exactly 1447 Galactic Standard Time. The converted cargo vessel had taken a direct hit from the hegemony cruiser domination and was breaking apart. Its hull split open like a cracked egg. Atmosphere and debris spilled into space in a glittering cloud of destruction. What happened next violated every principle of military tactics that Crixtal had learned in his 2 centuries of observing warfare. 3 human ships immediately broke from their attack patterns and moved to cover the dying vessel. The destroyer Resilience, the frigate Hope, and the patrol craft Guardian all changed course simultaneously, placing themselves between the damaged Perseverance and the hegemony guns that were preparing to finish it off. What are they doing? Admiral Vextar's voice carried confusion as he watched the tactical display. They're exposing themselves to concentrated fire to protect a ship that's already lost. Crixtal adjusted his sensors to get a clearer view of the rescue operation. The 3 human ships were forming a protective screen around Perseverance, absorbing enemy fire that should have destroyed the crippled vessel. Meanwhile, small rescue shuttles launched from other human ships, racing through the debris field to evacuate survivors. The humans were risking their entire fleet to save the crew of a single damaged ship. All hegemony vessels, Admiral Vextar commanded, concentrate fire on the ships protecting the damaged human vessel. Force them to abandon their rescue operation. Energy beams lanced out from the 3 hegemony cruisers, focusing their fire on the human ships that were shielding Perseverance. The destroyer Resilience took multiple hits, her shields failing under the concentrated assault. Hull plating began to melt and peel away from her superstructure. Captain Yuri's voice came across the communication channels from Resilience. We're taking heavy damage, but rescue operations continue. Do not break formation. Crixtal watched in fascination as the human ship held position even as her hull began to fail. The frigate Hope moved closer, extending her own shields to cover Resilience. The patrol craft Guardian positioned herself to block fire from the 3rd hegemony cruiser. It was a perfect example of pack behavior, but applied to space warfare in ways that defied all military logic. The rescue operation took 12 minutes. 12 minutes during which the human fleet could have pressed their attack or attempted to retreat. Instead, they used those precious minutes to save 63 crew members from a ship that was strategically worthless. When the last shuttle cleared the debris field, Commander Hana's voice carried across the fleet. All survivors recovered. Resume attack patterns. The 3 ships that had protected the rescue operation were badly damaged. Resilience was venting atmosphere from multiple hull breaches. Hope had lost her main engines and was running on maneuvering thrusters. Guardian was down to emergency power. Any rational commander would have ordered them to retreat to safety. Instead, all 3 ships rejoined the attack. Crixtal found himself updating his tactical analysis. The humans weren't just fighting as individuals coordinating their actions. They were operating as a single organism with multiple parts, each willing to sacrifice itself for the survival of the whole. Squadron Leader. Wu Jin's fighter group demonstrated this principle in the most disturbing way possible. When the hegemony cruiser Inevitable targeted the human command ship Indomitable with its main weapons, Wu Jin led his remaining fighters directly into the path of the energy beam. All fighters. Intercept formation, Wu Jin commanded. Protect the command ship. 16 human fighters positioned themselves between Inevitable and Indomitable. When the cruiser fired, the energy beam destroyed 12 fighters instantly. But the sacrifice worked. The blast was dispersed enough that Indomitable's shields held. The 4 surviving fighters, including Wu Jin's own craft, immediately regrouped and continued their attack run on Inevitable. They showed no hesitation despite having just watched their squadron mates die protecting them. Commander Daeho, Wu Jin reported. Command ship is safe. Continuing attack on priority target. Crixtal realized that the human concept of acceptable losses was completely different from any species he had studied. For most civilizations, casualties were unfortunate necessities to be minimized. For humans, casualties seemed to be personal failures that demanded immediate response. Every time a human ship was destroyed, the remaining vessels didn't just continue fighting. They fought harder. When the patrol craft Defiance was destroyed by concentrated fire from 2 hegemony ships, the human fleet's response was immediate and coordinated. 5 ships changed their attack vectors to target the cruisers that had killed their comrade. Their assault was so intense that one of the hegemony ships was forced to retreat behind the other cruisers to repair its damaged shields. "Admiral," came a report from the hegemony ship Triumph. "The human fleet is displaying unprecedented coordination. They appear to be sharing tactical data in real time across all vessels." Krixtal checked this observation against his own sensor readings. The human ships were indeed operating with a level of coordination that should have been impossible for such a primitive species. When one ship discovered a weakness in hegemony shield frequencies, that information was immediately available to every other human vessel. Engineer So Young, working from the damaged Indomitable, had discovered that hegemony shields had a brief reset cycle every 3.2 seconds. Within minutes of her discovery, every human ship was timing their attacks to exploit this weakness. "All ships," Commander Hana transmitted. "New tactical data confirms shield vulnerability window. Coordinate firing sequences for maximum effect." The human fleet began firing in coordinated volleys, timing their attacks to hit during the brief moments when hegemony shields were weakest. The effectiveness of their assault increased dramatically, even though they were using the same primitive weapons. Krixtal noted that the humans were adapting their tactics mid-battle based on observed enemy behavior. This kind of real-time tactical evolution was theoretically possible, but had never been observed in actual combat. Most species developed battle plans before engagement, and stuck to them regardless of changing circumstances. The humans seemed to view their initial tactics as starting points rather than fixed strategies. Pilot Hyunwoo demonstrated this adaptability when his fighter was too damaged to continue normal operations. Instead of retreating to a safe distance, he began using his crippled craft as a guided missile, accelerating toward hegemony ships and detonating his remaining weapons at point-blank range. "This is Hyunwoo," he transmitted as his fighter approached the cruiser domination. "Weapons are offline, but I still have forward momentum and a reactor that's running hot." The impact destroyed Hyunwoo's fighter completely, but the explosion damaged Domination's sensor array and disrupted her targeting systems. The cruiser's next volley missed its intended target by several kilometers. "That pilot just weaponized his own death," Admiral Vextar reported to the Hegemony Command. "Request immediate tactical update on human psychological profiles." Krixtal was beginning to understand that the Admiral's request was pointless. The humans weren't operating according to any psychological profile in the Hegemony databases. They were doing something that no other species had ever done in recorded galactic history. They were treating individual survival as less important than group success, but without losing the initiative and creativity that made them effective fighters. The cruiser Resilience provided the most disturbing example of this behavior. Captain Yuri's ship had been reduced to 20% of normal combat effectiveness. Her engines were failing, her weapons were running on emergency power, and her hull was venting atmosphere from 17 different breaches. Any rational commander would have ordered her to withdraw from combat and attempt to reach safety. Instead, Captain Yuri maneuvered her dying ship to provide cover for the human medical vessels that were attempting to rescue survivors from other damaged ships. She positioned Resilience between the rescue operations and the hegemony guns, using her ship as a shield while the medical teams worked. "Medical shuttles report 3 more minutes needed for evacuation," came the report from the rescue coordinator. "Understood," Captain Yuri replied. "We'll give you 5. For the next 5 minutes, Resilience absorbed everything the hegemony cruisers could throw at her. Her remaining shields failed in the first minute. Her hull began to buckle under the concentrated fire. Atmosphere streamed from dozens of new holes in her superstructure, but she held position until every survivor had been rescued. When the medical shuttles reported that all rescue operations were complete, Captain Yuri gave her final command. "All hands to escape pods. This is Yuri. Resilience has completed her mission." The ship's crew evacuated in less than 90 seconds. As the last escape pod cleared the dying vessel, Resilience exploded in a massive fireball that briefly outshone the local star. The other human ships paused their attacks for exactly 10 seconds. Krixtal timed the silence, wondering if the humans were finally ready to surrender after losing one of their most powerful vessels. Instead, the pause was for something else entirely. Commander Daeho's voice carried across all communication channels. Captain Yuri and the crew of Resilience gave us time. The arrival of hegemony reinforcements should have ended the battle immediately. Crystal watched his tactical display update as 2 additional battle cruisers and a dreadnought dropped out of hyperspace, their massive forms casting shadows across the human fleet. The dreadnought Inevitable Doom was 3 times the size of a standard battle cruiser, mounting weapons capable of cracking planets. The 2 cruisers, Absolute Victory and Final Justice, were fresh from shipyards, their crews trained specifically for system pacification operations. The human fleet now faced 6 hegemony warships, including the most powerful vessel in this sector of the galaxy. By every measure of military logic, the battle was over. The humans should have surrendered immediately. Instead, Commander Deho opened communications with his home planet. Earth Control. This is Commander Deho. Hegemony reinforcements have arrived. We are now facing a Dreadnought-class vessel and 5 battle cruisers. Current fleet status, 7 ships operational, 4 ships heavily damaged but fighting, 3 ships providing medical support only. Crystal expected the transmission to be a request for reinforcements or permission to surrender. The human homeworld certainly couldn't send additional ships in time to affect the battle's outcome. Their entire space fleet was already engaged. Understood, Commander, came the reply from Earth. What are your intentions? Commander Deho's response defied all logic. We continue the mission. If we fall here, make sure they remember what happened to the medical ship Mercy. Make sure they know we didn't choose this fight, but we finished it. Acknowledged, Commander. Earth stands with you. The transmission ended. No reinforcements were coming. No escape plan was offered. The humans on their homeworld had simply accepted that their entire space fleet was about to be destroyed, and their only concern was ensuring the battle would be remembered. Admiral Vextar, commanding the newly arrived reinforcements, opened communications with the human fleet. Commander Deho, this is Admiral Vextar of the Hegemony 7th Fleet. You are now facing overwhelming force. Your brave resistance has been noted and will be reported to the Galactic Council with respect. Surrender now and save the lives of your remaining crews. The Admiral's tone was almost respectful. Even hegemony commanders could recognize courage when they saw it. The humans had fought well against impossible odds, and they deserved an honorable surrender. Commander Deho's response came immediately. Admiral Vextar, your offer is noted and declined. We have new contacts on our screens, which means you brought friends to our party. That was rude. We'll have to respond appropriately. Crystal felt his breathing apparatus flutter with something approaching disbelief. The human commander was not only refusing surrender in the face of overwhelming force, he was making jokes about it. The humans were treating the arrival of certain death as a minor social inconvenience. Commander, Admiral Vextar replied, I don't think you understand your situation. You are facing a dreadnought. Your largest remaining ship is a damaged cruiser. This is not courage. This is insanity. Admiral, Commander Deho responded, you're probably right about the insanity part. But you're wrong about one thing. We do understand our situation perfectly. We're humans. This is what we do. The human fleet began moving into a new formation. Instead of spreading out to minimize damage from the dreadnought's massive weapons, they were clustering together in what appeared to be a defensive ball. It was exactly the wrong tactic to use against overwhelming firepower. Crystal adjusted his sensors to get a better view of the human formation. What he saw made him question his own equipment. The human ships weren't just clustering randomly, they were forming layers, with the most damaged ships on the outside and the most functional vessels protected in the center. It was a formation designed to protect the group's most valuable assets by sacrificing the most expendable ones. Except the humans had it backwards. They were putting their most damaged ships, the ones that could barely fight, in the positions of greatest danger. Commander Hana's voice carried across the fleet communications. All ships, adopt protective formation around medical vessels. Repeat, all combat units form defensive shell around medical ships. The humans were prioritizing the protection of their medical ships over their combat vessels. They were treating their doctors and rescue crews as more valuable than their weapons and fighters. It was completely insane by any military standard, Crystal knew. Squadron Leader. Wujin's voice came from the 3 remaining fighters. Medical ships are covered, Commander. We're ready for whatever they want to throw at us. The dreadnought Inevitable Doom powered up its main weapons. The energy buildup was so massive that Krixtal's sensors registered it from 50,000 kilometers away. When those weapons fired, they would vaporize everything in their path. All hegemony vessels, Admiral Vextar commanded. Prepare for final assault. Target human combat ships first. Leave the medical vessels for last. Perhaps seeing their protectors destroyed will convince them to surrender. The Dreadnought's weapons reached full charge. The two fresh cruisers moved into firing positions. The three original hegemony ships, despite their damage, prepared to add their firepower to the final assault. The humans were about to face the combined weapons of 6 hegemony warships, including the most powerful vessel in known space. Krixtal expected panic, desperate last-minute evacuation attempts, or final surrender messages. Instead, the humans did something that made him question his own sanity. They began singing. The song started on the human flagship Indomitable. Commander Deho's voice, broadcast on all frequencies, began a melody that Krixtal's translation systems identified as something called Amazing Grace. Within seconds, every human ship had joined in. Krixtal had observed many species facing death in battle. Some prayed to their gods. Others performed final rituals. Many simply accepted their fate in silence. He had never seen an entire fleet sing together as they prepared to die. The song was slow, mournful, but somehow triumphant. It spoke of being lost and then found, of being blind and then seeing clearly. As the human voices joined together across the vacuum of space, Krixtal realized he was listening to a funeral song that was also a declaration of hope. The humans were singing their own requiem while preparing to fight to the last ship. What are they doing? Admiral Vextar's voice carried confusion and something that might have been unease. The hegemony crews were experienced professionals who had conquered dozens of systems. They had seen every form of pre-battle ritual known to galactic civilization. None of them had ever encountered an enemy that sang together as they faced certain death. The human song ended with the line, "Was blind, but now I see." As the last note faded, Commander Deho's voice carried across all frequencies. For Earth, for each other, and for those who will judge what we do here today. The human fleet began its final attack. 7 functional ships and 4 heavily damaged vessels accelerated towards 6 hegemony warships. The disparity in firepower was so vast that the battle should have lasted less than a minute. Instead, the humans began demonstrating tactics that had never been seen in galactic warfare. The damaged cruiser Perseverance, barely holding together after hours of combat, suddenly accelerated past the other human ships and headed directly toward the Dreadnought. Captain Jinwoo's ship was running on emergency power and had lost most of her weapons, but she was moving at maximum speed toward the most powerful ship in the hegemony fleet. "This is Captain Jinwoo," came the transmission. "Perseverance is making her final run. We're going to give that Dreadnought something to think about." The Dreadnought's defensive weapons opened fire, hitting Perseverance with enough energy to destroy a space station. The human cruiser's shields failed instantly, and her hull began to disintegrate under the massive firepower. But Captain Jinwoo kept coming. Perseverance struck the Dreadnought's forward shields at a significant fraction of light speed. The impact created a massive explosion that lit up half the solar system. When the energy discharge faded, both ships were gone. The humans had just destroyed the most powerful weapon in the hegemony fleet by ramming it with a ship that was already dying. "Impossible," Admiral Vextar transmitted. "No ship's hull could penetrate Dreadnought-class shields." Engineer So Young's voice came from the human flagship. Captain Jinwoo overloaded his reactor core at the moment of impact. "The explosion came from inside your shields, not outside them." Krixtal realized what the humans had done. They had turned their most damaged ship into a weapon capable of destroying the enemy's most powerful vessel. It was tactically brilliant and completely insane at the same time. The remaining human ships pressed their attack against the 5 surviving hegemony vessels. Without the Dreadnought's overwhelming firepower, the battle became more even, though the humans were still badly outnumbered. Squadron Leader Wu Jin led his 3 fighters against the cruiser. Absolute victory, using the debris from the destroyed Dreadnought as cover for his approach. His fighters were too small to significantly damage a battle cruiser, but they served as spotters for the human ships with heavier weapons. "Target acquired," Wu Jin reported, transmitting firing solution to all ships. "Enemy cruiser has weak spot in rear shield array." The human fleet concentrated their fire on the weakness Wu Jin had. Admiral Vextar's request for additional reinforcements came at hour 9 of what should have been a 30-minute battle. Crystal recorded the transmission with growing fascination as the hegemony commander attempted to explain his situation to fleet headquarters. Command, this is Admiral Vextar requesting immediate reinforcement. Human resistance has exceeded all projections. We have lost 1 dreadnought destroyed completely. 2 cruisers are heavily damaged and withdrawing. Enemy fleet strength reduced to 4 functional vessels, but their effectiveness continues to increase. The response from Hegemony Command carried disbelief. Admiral, you are requesting reinforcements against a primitive species with inferior technology. Please confirm your tactical assessment. Command, tactical assessment confirmed. These humans are not fighting according to any known military doctrine. They are using their own casualties as weapons. They are adapting their tactics faster than we can respond. I have never encountered anything like this in 40 years of service. Crystal noted the strain in Admiral Vextar's voice. The veteran commander had conquered 17 star systems and never requested reinforcements against any enemy. The humans had pushed one of the hegemony's most experienced admirals to the edge of his tactical understanding. Reinforcements will arrive in 6 hours, came the response from command. Hold position and maintain siege protocols until support arrives. 6 hours. The humans had to survive 6 more hours against overwhelming odds before facing even more enemies. Commander Daeho's response to intercepted intelligence about incoming reinforcements was broadcast to his entire fleet. All ships, enemy reinforcements en route. Estimated arrival in 6 hours. Our mission parameters remain unchanged. Squadron leader Wu Jin's voice came from his damaged fighter. Commander, we're down to 1 functional fighter and 3 ships that can barely shoot straight. What exactly are our mission parameters at this point? Commander Daeho's answer would have been recorded as evidence of insanity by any military tribunal in known space. Our mission is to make them remember this day for the next 1,000 years. Our mission is to show them that some things are worth more than survival. Our mission is to prove that humans don't surrender. The remaining human ships began moving into what Crystal recognized as their final formation. 3 combat vessels, 1 medical ship, and Wu Jin's lone fighter formed up around the damaged flagship Indomitable. It was a defensive circle that could be maintained until their life support systems failed or their ammunition ran out. Instead of taking defensive positions, the humans did something that made Crystal question whether he was experiencing some form of sensory malfunction. They began broadcasting the names of their dead. Commander Hana's voice carried across all frequencies as she read from what appeared to be an extensive list. Captain Sung-ho of the Defiant, Captain Yuri of the Resilience, Pilot Hyunwoo of Fighter Squadron 7, Engineer Jin-ae of the Unity, Captain Jinwoo of the Perseverance. The list continued for nearly 10 minutes. Each name was read clearly, with what sounded like personal details about the individual. Family members were mentioned. Accomplishments were noted. Some entries included what appeared to be final messages or favorite sayings. What are they doing? Admiral Vextar asked his tactical officer. Unknown, sir. They appear to be broadcasting casualty lists on all frequencies. The transmission is being sent toward their home planet as well as to our ships. Crystal realized what the humans were doing. They weren't just reporting their casualties. They were ensuring that every person who had died would be remembered. The names weren't just records, they were promises. Promises that the sacrifice would not be forgotten. Promises that the deaths would have meaning. Promises that someone would carry the memory forward. The humans were turning their casualty list into a weapon of psychological warfare. When the roll call ended, Commander Daeho's voice carried a tone that made Crystal's skin crawl. Admiral Vextar, you have just heard the names of 97 human beings who died because you decided to attack our home. Every one of them had family. Every one of them had dreams. Every one of them died fighting to protect people they loved. Admiral Vextar's response was immediate. Commander, this is war. Casualties are inevitable. Your people chose to fight rather than accept peaceful integration. Admiral, Commander Daeho replied, you're absolutely right. We chose to fight. And every name on that list chose to die rather than surrender. Now you get to explain to your superiors why it took your entire fleet to kill 97 humans who wouldn't quit. The psychological impact on the hegemony crews was immediate and visible. Crystal's sensors detected increased communication between hegemony ships as crews discussed what they had just heard. The casualty list had reminded everyone involved that they weren't fighting against ships or tactical units. They were fighting against individuals who had made personal decisions to die rather than surrender. More disturbing was what happened next. The human ships began operating with a level of coordination that should have been impossible for such a reduced force. The 3 remaining combat vessels moved in perfect synchronization, sharing targeting data and defensive responsibilities as if they were components of a single weapon system. Engineer So Young, working from the damaged Indomitable, had achieved something that military technology experts had claimed was impossible. She had linked the navigation, weapons, and shield systems of all remaining human ships into a single network. The small fleet was now operating as one massive vessel with multiple hulls. "Admiral," came a report from the hegemony cruiser Final Justice, "human fleet coordination has increased beyond theoretical maximums. They are operating as a single tactical unit. How is that possible?" Admiral Vextar demanded. Engineer So Young provided the answer on an open channel. "Admiral, when you're facing extinction, you learn to share everything. Our ships are now sharing processing power, targeting data, shield energy, and life support systems. We're not 4 ships anymore. We're one ship with 4 hulls." Crystal checked his sensor readings and confirmed that the human claim was accurate. The 4 ships were sharing power between their energy systems, rotating shield coverage to protect damaged areas, and coordinating their movements with precision that exceeded anything he had seen from purpose-built fleet formations. The humans had achieved perfect tactical unity through pure desperation and engineering genius, the medical ship. Mercy's Hope demonstrated this principle when the hegemony forces targeted her specifically, hoping to break human morale by destroying their rescue capabilities. Instead of fleeing or hiding behind the combat ships, Mercy's Hope became an active participant in the fleet's defensive network. "This is Dr. Park aboard Mercy's Hope," came the transmission. "We're extending our shield generators to cover the flagship's damaged sections. All medical personnel are now serving as damage control specialists for the entire fleet." The human medical ship was using her shields and crew to keep the combat vessels fighting. The doctors and nurses were serving as engineers and damage control specialists, treating mechanical injuries to the ships as well as physical injuries to the crews. The humans had transformed their non-combatants into essential combat support personnel. Squadron Leader Wu Jin's final fighter demonstrated the ultimate expression of this unified tactical approach. His craft was too damaged to engage in normal combat operations, but he had discovered a way to use his ship's sensor array to provide early warning for the entire fleet. "All ships," Wu Jin reported. "I'm detecting hegemony flanking maneuver on Vector 77 Mark IV. Recommend defensive rotation to maintain coverage." The 4 human ships immediately adjusted their formation based on Wu Jin's sensor data. The single fighter had become the fleet's eyes and ears, providing tactical awareness that allowed the larger ships to respond to threats before they developed into immediate dangers. The humans had learned to use every available resource, no matter how small or damaged, as a component of their overall defensive strategy. Captain Yunji of the destroyer, Vengeance, provided the most disturbing example of human tactical adaptation when her ship's main weapons were destroyed by enemy fire. Instead of withdrawing from combat, she used her ship's remaining maneuvering thrusters to position Vengeance as a mobile shield for the other vessels. "This is Captain Yunji," she reported. "Main guns are offline, but we still have armor and attitude control. Using Vengeance as ablative shielding for the fleet." The destroyer began intercepting enemy fire directed at other human ships, using her hull as armor to protect more functional vessels. Captain Yunji was deliberately allowing her ship to be destroyed piece by piece, to keep the other ships fighting. It was tactically sound and completely insane at the same time. "Admiral," came a report from the hegemony tactical officer. "The humans are using their damaged ships as components of a larger defensive system. Each casualty makes their remaining ships more effective rather than weaker." Admiral Vextar's response carried frustration and growing concern. "That's impossible. Casualties reduce combat effectiveness. That's basic military science." "Sir, these humans don't appear to follow basic military science. They're treating their losses as tactical investments rather than unfortunate necessities." Crixtal The final phase of the battle began when the three remaining human ships executed a maneuver that Krixtal initially mistook for a desperate suicide run. The flagship Indomitable, the destroyer Vengeance, and the medical ship Mercy's Hope broke from their defensive formation and accelerated directly toward the hegemony battle line Admiral Vextar's. Immediate response was to order concentrated fire on the approaching human vessels. All ships target the human flagship. They're attempting a final desperate attack. Destroy them before they can reach effective weapons range. Krixtal watched the tactical display as massive energy beams reached out from 4 hegemony cruisers toward the approaching human ships. The firepower was enough to vaporize small moons, concentrated on 3 vessels that were already heavily damaged. But something was wrong with the human approach vector. Instead of aiming for the hegemony ships themselves, the humans were heading for empty space between the enemy vessels. It looked like a tactical error that would put them in the worst possible position, surrounded by enemies with no cover and no escape routes. What are they doing? Admiral Vextar demanded from his tactical officer. They're flying directly into a kill zone. Engineer So Young's voice came across all communication frequencies with an answer that chilled Krixtal to his core. Admiral, we're not trying to destroy your ships. We're trying to disable them. There's a difference. The human ships reached the center of the hegemony formation and suddenly stopped, not slowed down or changed course. They came to a complete halt in space as if they had run into an invisible wall. Squadron leader, Wu Jin's fighter, which had been following the larger ships, transmitted a final message. This is Wu Jin. Package delivered. All ships execute emergency jump procedures now. The 3 human ships began glowing with an energy discharge that made Krixtal's sensors overload and automatically shut down to prevent damage. When the sensors came back online, he saw something that defied every law of physics he knew. The space around the human ships was bending. Engineer So Young had used the modified FTL drives from all 3 ships to create a localized space-time distortion. The gravitational field was so intense that it was pulling the hegemony cruisers toward the center point, where the human ships had positioned themselves. Emergency evasive maneuvers, Admiral Vextar commanded. All ships maximum reverse thrust. But the hegemony cruisers couldn't escape. The gravitational distortion was pulling them inexorably toward the center point, where the human ships were creating their space-time anomaly. More importantly, the distortion was disrupting their weapon systems and shield generators. Admiral, came a panicked report from the cruiser Final Justice. Weapon systems are offline. The gravitational field is interfering with our energy flow. Shields are failing across all frequencies. Krixtal realized what the humans had accomplished. They had turned their final 3 ships into a weapon that could disable the entire hegemony fleet, without destroying it. Even facing inevitable death, the humans were trying to minimize casualties on both sides. Sir, the hegemony tactical officer reported, all ships are reporting system failures. The humans have created some kind of localized FTL disruption that's affecting our entire fleet. How is that possible? Admiral Vextar demanded. Their technology is primitive compared to ours. Engineer So Young's voice carried across the communication channels one final time. Admiral, our technology might be primitive, but our understanding of desperation is very advanced. We've had a lot of practice, but the gravitational distortion reached critical intensity. The 3 human ships at the center of the anomaly were being crushed by the same forces they had created, but their sacrifice was achieving its intended purpose. The 4 hegemony cruisers were being pulled helplessly toward the center point, their weapons and shields completely non-functional. All hands, Commander Deho's voice carried across the human fleet communication channels. Abandon ship. Repeat, all hands to escape pods. This is Commander Deho. It has been an honor serving with you. The evacuation of the 3 human ships took less than 2 minutes. Escape pods launched in all directions, carrying the human crews away from the gravitational anomaly their ships were creating. Squadron leader Wu Jin's fighter served as a rescue coordinator, guiding the escape pods toward safe distances. Evacuation complete, Wu Jin reported. All human personnel are clear of the distortion field. The 3 unmanned human ships continued to generate the gravitational anomaly that was disabling the hegemony fleet. But something unexpected was happening to the distortion field itself. Instead of growing stronger, it was beginning to stabilize. Engineer So Young's voice came from her escape pod. Admiral Vextar, The gravitational field will dissipate in approximately 20 minutes. Your ships will be undamaged but temporarily disabled. We could have made this permanent, but we chose not to. Krikstal checked his sensors and confirmed that the human assessment was accurate. The space-time distortion was designed to disable rather than destroy. The humans had created a weapon capable of neutralizing the entire hegemony fleet, but they had deliberately limited its effects to prevent permanent damage. Even in their moment of certain victory, the humans were showing mercy to their enemies. Why? Admiral Vextar's question carried genuine confusion. You could have destroyed us completely. Why spare our lives? Commander Deho's answer came from his escape pod. Admiral, because we're not you. We don't kill people just because we can. We kill them only when we have to. The gravitational distortion began to fade as the human ships that were generating it finally succumbed to the forces they had created. The three vessels collapsed in on themselves, compressed into dense matter by their own gravitational weapon. But their destruction had accomplished something unprecedented in galactic military history. The humans had achieved total victory while preserving the lives of their enemies. As the distortion field dissipated, the hegemony cruisers found their systems slowly coming back online. Weapons, shields, and engines gradually returned to normal function. Within an hour, the hegemony fleet would be fully operational again. But something fundamental had changed. Admiral Vextar's next transmission carried a tone that Krikstal had never heard from a hegemony commander. All ships, stand down from combat status. Cease all offensive operations, sir? The tactical officer's question carried confusion. The human fleet is destroyed. We can complete the pacification of their home planet. Negative, Admiral Vextar replied. Open communications with the human homeworld. We need to discuss terms. Krikstal realized that Admiral Vextar had just done something that no hegemony commander had ever done in recorded history. He had chosen to negotiate with a defeated enemy instead of demanding unconditional surrender. The communication link with Earth was established within minutes. The human response came from someone identified as President Cho, the leader of their planetary government. This is President Cho. We are prepared to discuss terms for the surrender of our planet. Admiral Vextar's response surprised everyone, including his own crew. President Cho, this is Admiral Vextar. I am not here to accept your surrender. I am here to offer ours. The silence that followed lasted for nearly a minute. When President Cho finally responded, his voice carried disbelief. Admiral, I'm not sure I understand. Our fleet is destroyed. We have no orbital defenses. You have 4 battle cruisers against an undefended planet. President Cho, Admiral Vextar replied. Your fleet may be destroyed, but they accomplished something that no military force in galactic history has ever achieved. They defeated a hegemony fleet while preserving the lives of their enemies. They could have killed us all, but they chose mercy instead. Krikstal began composing his final report as he listened to the most unprecedented conversation in galactic diplomatic history. Mr. President, Admiral Vextar continued, I have spent 40 years conquering worlds for the hegemony. I have defeated species with technology superior to ours. I have overcome enemies with greater numbers and better tactics. But I have never encountered a force that could win through pure determination and then choose mercy in the moment of victory. Admiral, President Cho responded, what exactly are you proposing? I am proposing that the Galactic Council immediately reclassify humanity from a primitive species requiring pacification to an advanced civilization deserving of full membership. I am recommending that your military leaders be invited to serve as tactical advisors for hegemony forces. And personally, I am requesting permission to learn from the humans who just taught me that there are things more important than winning. The negotiation that followed lasted 6 hours. When it concluded, humanity had become the first species in galactic history to join the hegemony as equal partners rather than conquered subjects. The treaty granted humans full citizenship rights, access to galactic technology, and representation on the Galactic Council. More importantly, the treaty established the principle that species could join the galactic community through demonstrated character rather than technological superiority or military submission. 6 months later, Krikstal submitted his final report to the Galactic Council. The document was classified at the highest levels and became required reading for every military academy in known space. The report's